Listen, we've got one thing to say, and only one thing to say. This podcast is going to be 5 seconds long, and it is Wonka was really good.
Oh, I knew you were going to say that. I think some people will be tickled to find out that...
Okay, keep going.
Tickled to... We watched Wonka yesterday, and we saw all the jokes about how it's like, my name is Willy Wonka, and he talks like a TikToker.
Listen down and quiet up.
Yeah. And we were like, this movie's going to be dumb. And then we saw it, and it was really good.
No, I actually thought it was going to be like Greatest Showman, kind of like...
Something superficial and kind of like...
12-year-olds love it.
Kind of like vague about it.
Yeah. And but it was really good.
It was really charming.
I laughed until I cried at one point.
Yeah. I want to talk about the running gag, but Wonka spoilers, I guess? Should we talk about
I don't know what you're saying.
Keegan-Michael Key's character?
I don't know who that is.
The cop? The police officer?
Oh, yeah.
The 3 villains are bribing him with chocolate that he loves, and they keep giving him like astronomically like ridiculous amounts of chocolate, and he gets progressively fatter throughout the whole film, and it's mad funny.
And you could say that tickled McKay.
It tickled me.
Oh, I don't like it when you say that.
So yeah, it was good, in case you wanted to know.
And everyone who said that it was good last year, you were right. And now we're more informed, and we can talk about it a little better.
Noodle, apple strudel.
Uh-huh. Some people don't, and some people doodle.
So true. Welcome to Gallery.
What are you talking about today?
Am I going first?
Sure.
No, you go first.
Why?
Rock, paper, scissors.
Okay.
Best of 3?
Yeah.
Really?
No, just one.
Oh, okay. Wait. So whoever wins goes first?
Yeah.
Okay. No, I went first the last time we did rock, paper, scissors, and it was me. I want
rock,
you to go
paper,
first.
Scissors
You go first?
literally just spoke. That's the law.
Person who goes first is what?
Oh my gosh, can you just go?
Okay, all right. I don't want to, though. Why are you...
Okay, fine. I can go.
I can go first if you want. And that's the episode. Okay, I'll go first. I am really excited to talk about this because I've been thinking about it for like a week. And the more I've thought about it and the more I've researched it, the cooler and like... more of like a positive rabbit hole I've gone down. So I'm not talking necessarily about one piece of art. Excuse me.
Museum.
No. What? No.
You could talk about a museum.
I am talking about museum.
What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that?
Nothing. It's just not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about kind of a medium, but some people might not consider it a medium, but it totally is.
Okay.
You want to guess it?
No.
It's kind of like, it's a kind of sculpture.
Huh?
Do you have any guesses?
Marble sculpture.
Marble sculpture? No.
Wood carving.
No, that's a great guess though.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's the same vein as like what I'm doing.
3D printing.
Yeah, you guessed it.
Yeah, I knew it.
I am talking about the wonderful world of 3D printing.
Yay! Okay,
which
okay.
Is so cool.
It is cool.
This was kind of insinuated when we went and stayed with some friends who one of them is an avid 3D printer. Their apartment, you would look anywhere you look, there's a little knick-knack that's 3D printed.
A little thingamabob.
A little whoozy whatsy. Mm-hmm. Okay, anyway, 3D printing is really cool. And if you don't know what it is exactly what it sounds like. It's not just like printing ink on a page. It's printing a 3-dimensional object, which to some might sound like dark magic. But let me kind of go through. I want to talk about like a brief history of it.
Oh.
Okay.
Like with the printer, the printing press.
Kind of, but more like the history of 3D printing as we know it today.
Okay, let's hear it.
So, the earliest 3D printer was originated in 1981. Mm-hmm. And
wait, really?
Yeah. Technically, it goes back to like the 40s.
Huh?
Yeah. But
what took them so long?
do you mean what took them so long?
I feel like 3D printing was just like the last couple years.
Yeah, right? I know.
Yeah.
I'll get to that. It'll make sense why it was the last couple of years in a second. But it was originated in 1981 by Dr. Hideo Kojima.
Huh?
Just kidding.
Oh, okay. I was going to say. Metal Gear Solid?
Metal Gear Solid? Death Stranding? No, Dr. Hideo Kodama.
Oh, okay.
The first prototype machines that he made would use resin to cast parts layer by layer. So the printer would make pieces of a 3D like object that they were printing, and it would use resin. And if you don't know what resin is, it's like liquid plastic that dries by like UV light. I don't really know a lot about it, but it's used to make D&D dice a lot. Okay, then a few years later, in 1986, the man, the myth, the legend, Chuck Hull, who is widely considered the inventor of the 3D printer, he created
My man Chuck.
Yeah, Chuck.
I love him.
You love
I have a
him?
picture of him in my office.
You don't have an office.
Okay.
So he commercialized SLA, which stands for stereolithography.
That was my chapstick. I'm sorry.
Something fell on the floor.
Keep going.
So he commercialized SLA, stereolithography, which is like resin 3D printing that we just talked about. And he invented the .stl format, which is like the file format that people use for 3D printers now.
Like the mod.
Yeah,
like
that's
the
like
model.
yeah.
Okay.
The 3D models that people upload to 3D printers, that's a .stl.
Huh, good for him.
So stereolithography is available in off-the-shelf machines. It was first patented in 1984. And let me gather my thoughts here because I'm trying to read and like talk about this at the same time. But anyway, what you need to know about Chuck Hull is what I already said, is that he kind of commercialized it. And stereolithography, kind of the idea of like additive like printing, is basically what kind of started 3D printing today. So in 1988, a guy named Carl Deckard licensed something called SLS, which is selective laser sintering, and it's like 3D printing that uses powder.
Huh?
Yeah, I know. Like, I literally had to like read the article like 7 times over to understand what it was, and I still don't get it because it's so complicated. But it uses like powder, and it like combines the powder together with heat, and then it like piece by piece makes a 3D object.
I am way too stupid for
I
this
know,
conversation.
I'm way too stupid. But basically, you have all these. You basically have 3 different techniques of 3D printing, which is stereolithography, which was invented by Chuck, and then Carl with SLS, selective laser sintering, and then you have
Hideo
Kojima. No, then you have fused deposition modeling, and fused deposition modeling is the plastic kind that we learn today. But basically, it wasn't until the mid 2000s where all of the patents for like the 3D printers that people made in the 80s went like into like the public domain. So that's when people started to take the patents and make their own 3D printers, and that's when RepRap was founded, and they made a ton of 3D printers, and they actually made like DIY kits for 3D printers. So like you could make your own, you could build like put together your own 3D printer and have it at home.
So you could,
I think.
Could you 3D print a 3D printer?
I'm glad that you asked that because that's actually what the RepRap did.
Wow.
It 3D printed its own parts.
Ah.
So you could make a 3D printer out of a 3D printer.
Let's go.
Which is kind of amazing.
That's cool.
It's like a self-reproducing species.
Now this I can understand. Yeah. I don't care about lithography. I care about 3D printers making other 3D printers.
That's like that video where the guy grinds a hot dog into a paste and then he makes a hot dog
like
out of the paste and then he puts that in a bun. But so that's kind of the brief history, is all these different additive, I forget what it's called. It's just like, it's like additive printing.
Cool.
And so for a long time it was used for like making parts for like in companies and like industrial type things. But once it got commercialized, slowly but surely it started to get easier and cheaper to do 3D printing. So in 2020, that's when 3D printers reached a level of quality and price that were really accessible by most people. And those are the 3D printers that we know. The really small desktop ones that go for like $200. And that's kind of the 3D printing that I really want to talk about, because the world of 3D printing is amazing. You have these little 3D printers, and you have like these spools of plastic that feed into this little, like, I don't know, what would you call it? Like a nozzle or something, or like, I don't know. But
dude, I don't know one thing about 3D printing other than it make a little dumpster.
Except the horrible history that I recounted really poorly.
It's okay. I didn't listen to that.
This guy. I was like, this guy did this, and I don't
Carl.
know what it is, but it's cool.
Carl.
And, yeah. Basically, plastic gets fed into this little nozzle that heats up the plastic into a molten level, and then it squeezes the plastic out into like layers of a 3D model that you upload to the printer. Mm-hmm. So, like, simply put, it's the same thing as printing on a piece of paper. You send the file to the printer, and then the printer goes each layer of the text.
More layers than one.
Yeah, but it's plastic. It's 3D.
Yeah.
So the reason why like this is so amazing to me, is not necessarily like it itself, because it in and of itself is like an engineering marvel, and that is a discussion for another day. But for me, what's so cool about 3D printing is the potential of it, and just the amount of things that you can do. So what I think what I love, one of the things I love about art the most is, or really like creation in general, is you can't create things out of thin air. Like paintings are painted from tubes of paint. It comes from something. Sculpture is always things put together, or clay molded in a certain way, or a block chiseled down. It's creating something not from nothing, but something else. Mm-hmm. And that is exactly what 3D printing is. It's the concept of taking a boring spool of plastic and turning it into something incredible. But that is combined with the world of 3D modeling, with the world of coding, with the world of engineering. And when you get the right minds behind that kind of technology, it is absolutely amazing. And I'm going to talk about that right now.
Yeah, tell me about it.
By talking about some of like the most popular 3D prints, some of the things you can do with it, some of the things that people have done with it, and then just kind of like what I think of it, and then I'll be done.
Okay.
So kind of a slow start talking about 3D printing, but I thought it was important to kind of get into like how it came to be. So I think the coolest thing that I read about 3D printing was in 2015, a Swedish company called CellLink made something called BioInk. And basically, it's a seaweed-based material that can be used to 3D print biological tissue.
They making people?
Well, and potentially human organs.
They making people.
They 3D print people. Which sounds really weird, but like when you start to think of like the applications of that, obviously like in 2015 it was really primitive, and but the potential of like 3D printing biological material is like a medical marvel.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
I guess I can take off that I'm an organ donor.
Yeah, right. Just 3D print a kidney.
You don't need me anymore.
Yeah. So one of the most popular 3D prints, can I use your phone to pull up the image of it?
I'll allow it.
All right. So one of the most popular 3D prints, and it's kind of a something that people do to like show off like what their 3D printer can do, is this little guy. And I'll put it up on the screen for you, of course. This guy is called Benchy the Boat.
I've seen that.
Yeah, it's a little tugboat. And audio listeners, it's literally just a blue cartoon tugboat. But this is just like a really common way to like just show off what a 3D printer can do.
Cool.
It's like really cute. It's like, I guess it's kind of like the equivalent of like the sphere exercise in like drawing, where you draw a sphere and then you draw the shadows, and then it's like it just kind of shows what the medium can do.
Oh, okay.
It's so
yeah.
I don't know why it's called Benchy. I think it's short for like benchmark. Yeah. So which makes sense. Another thing is The enable hand. This is a 3D printed prosthetic hand. Sorry, we had to cut because my laptop, which is being used to record, got a Discord notification and it distracted me.
And he went...
Yeah. Anyway, the enable hand is a prosthetic hand that's 3D printed. Imagine you like lose your hand and you're like, oh, I'll just 3D print a new one.
That's awesome.
I don't know how they hook it up to the human hand to make it like close and stuff. I think it's some medical procedure, but
hook up
so
some
cool.
resin to your nerves.
I mean, I think that there's some way that they do it, but that's so like
that's really cool.
They made a hand.
That's really cool.
Yeah, and I just think that's
they
amazing.
They can stop taking them from dead people.
I know. And Frankensteining them onto people. This is a 3D printed couch that looks like a futuristic building or roller coaster. This is by, I'm going to butcher this name because I believe this guy is Finnish. Jan or Hane or something. I'm just going to say Hane because that makes most sense. Hane Kaitanen. He started a design label using 3D printing. And he pioneered a lot of useful applications like furniture. He 3D prints a lot of tables and sofas like this one.
That's a big 3D printer.
I know. It's a really big 3D printer. I don't know how he does it, but another very popular thing that a lot of people 3D print is this guy right here.
Little frog.
This is a 3D printed frog we have named Fred the Frog, and he is also kind of similar to Benchy the tugboat, I think.
But our frog is caked up.
Our frog is caked up. He has a little butt. Okay, anyway. So now I'm just going to like lightning round a bunch of things that were 3D printed that are like really common.
Okay.
Phone stands, lens caps for cameras, D&D dice, D&D figurines, video game controller stands, little block puzzles, keychains, COVID face shields, new frames for broken glasses, ice scrapers for cars, tree ornaments, under desk drawers. The possibilities are quite literally endless.
I saw a model for shoes the other day.
I know.
Yeah.
Like, you can literally do anything. You can print anything as long as you have the 3D model for it.
That's awesome.
And this is also 3D printed. This is a little succulent planter based off the Pokemon Bulbasaur. And I sanded it down and I painted it, and it's something that I've always wanted, and I really like it. A buddy 3D printed it for me. So this has been a lot of me just kind of barfing up info about 3D printing. And you're kind of like, isn't this an art podcast? How does this relate to art?
Exactly.
So obviously it's sculpture. Obviously there's 3D modeling with it. But to me, the art in it to me isn't necessarily like the actual 3D prints. To me, the art is in the creativity used to like see a problem or get an idea and think, oh, I could 3D print that. Or like, oh, I need like a phone stand. Oh, how could I make it like all ergonomic? Mm-hmm. It's the creative art of problem solving. That's what 3D printing is to me.
That's cool.
Is seeing like, oh, I need a phone stand. I can just 3D print a phone stand. Or how do I get this thing attached to the wall? Or, oh, I'm missing a part for this device that I have. You can 3D print it. And that to me is really creative, of seeing something missing, needing to fill a void, and finding or creating a 3D model and using the best materials to print it out. I think there's a lot of creativity to that. I think it's the same creativity that's used in construction or city planning. It's creative problem solving. And 3D printing is the manifestation of that with art and science working together. Okay, McKay, who's editing the podcast, cutting in once again. I had texted the friend who made us the frog, the Avid 3D printer we talked about earlier, before we recorded the podcast, what his favorite thing about 3D printing was. And he didn't text me back until after we had recorded, so I'm adding this after the fact. He said, I really like it because you can bring your creative ideas to life, especially for those that start messing with 3D modeling. The possibilities are endless. Also, I have always found accomplishment and satisfaction in seeing and holding something that I made. It is a creative outlet for someone who's not an artist.
Dang, that's
Yeah.
really cool.
It lends itself so well to creative thinking. 3D printing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm kind of glad that you started out with such a technological intro with the history, because I didn't listen to any of it and I thought it was really boring. But I feel like that I feel like it really pushes your point of like, it's cool to see how art and science intertwine here.
Yeah.
Because I feel like, I mean, myself included, I have looked at people who own 3D printers and I'm like, yeah, they study computer engineering and they're really nerdy.
Yeah. Which we love.
Yeah. But it's really interesting to think about this like pursuit as an artistic and creative one. Mm-hmm. And I mean, you're right. We were having a conversation today with one of our buddies who has a 3D printer. Right. And they said their dad has one, and he just like looks for problems around the house now to like see if he can like find a way to use his 3D printer. Exactly. That's super fun.
And there are just huge communities around like 3D printing like cases for like video game handhelds they're making. There's like a huge community around making 3D printed lightsabers. And I think 3D printing is really just emblematic of how like art is in general. Because when I think of like painting, back in the day, like some of the earliest like paintings in Europe, I mean, painting was used to paint portraits. It was used for like purely like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like not artistic,
like
but
functional?
Yeah, functional. Yeah. Thank you. I mean, it was mainly used for like function, you know? If you wanted to make yourself look good as a ruler and you wanted a nice portrait, just call up the painter. It's like the same thing as saying, call up the plumber or call up the photographer, because like we need this functional task to get done. It wasn't necessarily for the sake of creating. Mm-hmm. And now, I mean, painting is used for that too still, but also for the sake of creating and also to make beautiful things. Mm-hmm. 3D printing is the same way. You know, it started as, something industrial and computer engineered to make parts for machines. And it totally is that now. But now really special and creative people are coming forward and unlocking some really cool potential where they're making prosthetic hands, but they're also making, picture frame hooks and really cool looking swords.
Caked up frogs.
It's just kind of this just infinite Wild West world that so many people are taking advantage of in the coolest ways imaginable. And I really appreciate it for that. I just feel like it has something special going on with it that I've never seen from like any other medium.
Yeah. Well, that's the funny thing about it is that I think what makes art so special so much of the time is that it's surrounded by passion. People
so
are really
true.
passionate about their medium or their show that they like or, stuff like that. And goodness be darned, if I haven't met a person with a 3D printer that was insane about their 3D printer.
Yeah.
Every single person.
Yeah. Every time we meet a person who loves 3D printing.
They're like, look what I printed, a little gadget.
Like, yeah. And they're not like, I use this to do this and this and this. And they're just like, this is cool. Literally. Like, obviously they do functional things with it, but like half the time it's just people.
They're like, I printed the boat.
They're like, this used to be a digital 3D model and now it's in my hand. And
yeah.
I love that.
It's super exciting.
It's just such a cool world that I'd love to get into someday. And it's a group of passionate people.
Yeah.
The people who use 3D printers. And I appreciate it. I love its contributions to the world of technology and to the world of art. And just to being creative in general.
Wow. Okay. Thank you for bringing such an interesting topic today.
Thank you.
I don't think I ever would have thought of 3D printing or even 3D modeling and been like, yeah, an art form.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it is. You're right.
It's different. It has some different applications, but is it not taking raw materials and turning it into something more? Mm-hmm. Is that not what creation is?
Whoa. He's dropping bars. That's amazing. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm sorry. Sorry, dude.
Can they 3D print anything to stop you from burping?
Probably.
Would that stop you from breathing?
Very interesting. That's all I got to say about 3D printing.
Yay! Okay, well, this is funny because mine actually relates quite a bit
Really?
to 3D printing.
I thought you were talking about a song.
I am.
What?
Can you take any guess what kind of song it is?
The 3D printing song?
Yeah.
I love that song.
It's called Benchy the Tugboat.
How's it go?
And it's written by Carl and
Benchy the
Hideo.
Tugboat.
I am talking about Rocket Man by Elton John.
Wait. Why does that have to do with 3D printing? Does he go, and I'm gonna 3D print the little frog, and he's gonna have a big butt. Okay. Frick. I can't believe you let me do that.
Today.
I can't believe you let me do that.
I just sat back. I was quiet. Okay.
Oh my gosh, what a good song. I love Elton John.
Okay, a lot of people do. He's
Yeah.
like one of the, highest touring artists of all time.
Yeah.
Like right behind Taylor Swift.
Amazing.
So Rocket Man. The reason I think it relates to 3D printing is because it talks about this reality where being an astronaut is an everyday 9 to 5 kind of thing, like a day job.
Yeah.
And
It
it's
reminds me of Ray Bradbury.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Funny that you mentioned that.
Funny that I mentioned that.
But we'll get to that. Because 3D printing, I feel like, is so technological and like futuristic or whatever. And I feel like that's what this song encompasses, actually.
Yeah.
So it relates kind of.
Cool.
But it's interesting to know what.
Nothing. And I think it's gonna
All right.
long, long time.
It's interesting to note that this song was written in 1972, or at least released in 1972. And what is that? Like 3 years after the
3
moon
years
landing?
from now.
What?
Yeah.
3 years after the moon landing.
Oh, we didn't land on the moon. Sorry. Gosh dang it.
Whatever you're on. I'd like some.
This water is so good. What'd you put in it?
Nothing?
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
Do you want to talk about your topic?
I'd love to.
Sorry.
But the interesting thing about this song and why I chose it was because I learned that the man who wrote it, Bernie Taupin, he was inspired by Ray Bradbury's short, The Rocket Man.
No way. I don't think I've read The Rocket Man yet. Is it in Illustrated Man?
It's in the Illustrated Man.
Okay.
And for what?
I think I have read it then.
Yeah, you've read the Illustrated Man.
Well, not the whole thing.
Wow. So for those of you who don't know, The Illustrated Man is a collection of short stories by Ray Bradbury, and Ray Bradbury is a prolific science fiction author.
It's one of my favorite books ever.
He's one of my favorite authors ever.
Yeah.
He's truly a master with words, and he has such a creative mind. And the sci-fi worlds that he creates, like, his skill is creating these eerie atmospheres and like weaving his words to really unsettle you almost.
Yeah. In a less is more sort of way.
Yeah.
There's a lot that he doesn't tell you.
Yeah.
But there's enough that he does tell you to kind of make you freak out.
Mm-hmm. I always said that Ray Bradbury wrote science fiction like a historical fiction author.
Yeah.
Because he's focused on the details and how the air smells and how the temperature in the room is, and you get a sense of actually being there.
Yeah. And he describes spaceships and planets and these otherworldly technologies with everyday language, in everyday terms, and he's a master. But we're not talking about Ray Bradbury. We're talking about Elton John.
Kind of. Oh, I'm doing both.
Okay, yeah, I know.
But so since I'm a lyric person, I figured we'd go through the lyrics
I was hoping you would.
From Rocket Man.
Yeah.
So it starts with, she packed my bags last night pre-flight, 0 hour, 9 a.m., and I'm going to be high as a kite by then. I miss the earth so much, I miss my wife. It's lonely out in space on such a timeless flight. That's the first chorus. And apparently, a fun fact about those first two lines, she packed my bags last night pre-flight, 0 hour 9 a.m. Bernie, the songwriter, thought of this on his way home, and he had to repeat it to himself for 2 hours, which he said was unfortunate, but worth it, because he didn't want to forget it.
Oh my
and when he came in, he was like, no one talk to me. But the line that I really want to talk about is, I'm going to be high as a kite by then, because you know the melody there, like...
And I'm gonna be high as a kite by then.
Yeah, that's it. It's really cool what he does with the melody here, because he kind of builds up to it suspensefully there, like I'm gonna be, and then he does high and stuff, and so you get this sense of actually like traveling up with him, and that like suspenseful beginning is like the nerves you feel before blast off, and then you're high, and then you come back to earth because he hasn't left yet, you know. And so he's using the melody to show the feelings of an astronaut almost, and like what it's like to go up, which I think is really, really great songwriting.
Yeah.
He says it's lonely out in space.
Yeah.
Most missions at the time just had 1 to 3 people, and it really was a lonely and sometimes depressive thing.
Yeah, I mean, you're out in the black void.
Yeah.
Jeez.
And in the chorus, it says, I think it's going to be a long, long time till touchdown brings me round again to find I'm not the man they think I am at home. And I really like that line, because in my research, I found, surprisingly, that a lot of astronauts, after they come home from being in space, struggle with addiction, like alcoholism.
Really?
And stuff like that.
Why?
And even Buzz Aldrin, the guy who landed on the moon, he had a period called the Lost Decade after he landed on the moon, where he worked as a car salesman, went through 2 marriages, and became an alcoholic after Apollo 11.
Really?
And it's just this idea of people believing that astronauts are heroes, they're amazing people, and them knowing to themselves that they're flawed human people. Yeah. And it's kind of the reckoning between these two things.
Dang, oh my gosh.
And so Elton John here is, I'm not the man they think I am at home. He's like doing this almost amazing job, but in this reality, it's his 9 to 5. He's just a rocket man.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, isn't that cool?
And that's just the first verse, pretty much. Holy frick.
So then what I found was interesting was this. Some people say that this song is an extended metaphor for Elton John's reality. He's a famous like rock star kind of thing. Like he's touring, and he's getting all these accolades from all these total strangers who just adore him, and then he has to go home and deal with habits. I mean, he was a heavy drug user and stuff, and just deal with this person that he was versus the person that everybody thought he was. Dang. Which is kind of the same as being an astronaut. And like even the travel into space, going up and being all by yourself, something so beautiful and amazing, and no one else experiences but you. It's the same thing that kind of rock stars experience.
Yeah. Art has a really, really, really good way of just being really, really powerful metaphors for a lot of things in our lives. And I think this is just a masterclass in that, where, you know, he's really appealing to kind of the everyday human toil of, you know, having a mundane life, even though people think you don't. And that's done through the analogy of an astronaut in space in the future. And I just really appreciate Rocket Man's ability to do that, because you see that everywhere. I mean, you see that in cinema and everywhere, of just these fantastical situations that are fictional, but they're really not.
And that's the power of the metaphor.
Yeah.
In literature mostly, but in songwriting and stuff, everything like that, is the ability of like authors to make you feel something that you couldn't have felt before.
Yeah.
And so I kind of wanted to bring that to The Rocket Man by Ray Bradbury.
Okay.
And talk. I kind of have a duo here.
Okay.
I'm talking about the song and the short piece of fiction together, because I feel that they go together. I mean, they do. It was inspired by one.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
I don't know if you've read The Rocket Man, but it is told from the perspective of a 14-year-old boy named Doug, whose dad's job is to be a rocket man.
I have read this.
Yeah,
I have read this. It's all coming back to me.
And he goes to space. His dad goes to space for months at a time and comes back for a couple days.
Yeah.
And he talks about his homecoming and him coming back, and his mom and him are super excited, and they kind of stay up all night like, oh, he's getting here. And when he comes home, he treats everything really normally, and they say specifically that he doesn't look at the sky. And the first day he comes home, he digs really hard in the garden, and he gets the dirt all over himself, and he's just furiously digging at the garden with the sky staring at him. You know, he's not staring at the sky. And then as the days progress, he slowly starts looking up, looking at the stars, like staring at them, and staying out late. And on their porch swing, he's like looking at the stars.
Yeah.
And his wife is like, please come back inside. And it's such an interesting progression of a story, because it's the wife being like, I miss him and I love him and I want him here, and like trying to convince her son to be like, don't bring it up, don't make him want to go back, like make it so he wants to be here. And the son at the same time being very interested in what a rocket man's life is like, and collecting all these rocks like from space, and just like asking him all these questions about what it's like.
Yeah.
And it's a really cool story. And do you want me to tell you the ending?
Yeah. Because I've read it. I know I'll remember it.
So the dad, he talks about how, he says, when you're out there, you want to be here. And when you're here, you want to be out there. And he asks his son not to become a rocket man, because it's hard to be split around that. And let's see. I wanted to read you a page of it, if that's okay.
Go ahead.
This is at the very, very end of the story. It's a short story.
Yeah.
And we can link the whole story below, and I would definitely recommend reading it, because it's so good.
Read Olive Illustrated Man.
Yeah, no, really.
Yeah.
But this is at the very end. When his dad decides that he's going out on one more like 3-month-long trip, and then after that he'll come home and stay home.
Yeah.
And he's not going to go back into space anymore. And so he leaves, and Doug is asking his mother a few questions. He said, Dad said that sometimes you don't act as if you hear or see him, I said. Then she explained everything to me quietly. When he went off into space 10 years ago, I said to myself, he's dead. Or as good as dead. So think of him dead. And when he comes back 3 or 4 times a year, it's not him at all. It's only a pleasant little memory or a dream. And if a memory stops or a dream stops, it can't hurt half as much. So most of the time I think of him as dead. But other times I can't help myself. I bake pies and treat him as if he were alive, and then it hurts. No, it's better to think he hasn't been here for 10 years and I'll never see him again. It doesn't hurt as much. 10 years ago, said Mother, I thought, what if he dies on Venus? Then we'll never be able to see Venus again. What if he dies on Mars? We'll never be able to look at Mars again, all red in the sky, without wanting to go in and lock the door. Or what if he died on Jupiter or Saturn or Neptune? On those nights when those planets were high in the sky, we wouldn't have anything to do with the stars. I guess not, I said. And then the very last couple paragraphs say this. The message came the next day. The messenger gave it to me, and I read it standing on the porch. The sun was setting. Mom stood in the screen door behind me, watching me fold the message and put it in my pocket. Mom, I said. Don't tell me anything I don't already know, she said. She didn't cry. Well, it wasn't Mars, and it wasn't Venus, and it wasn't Jupiter or Saturn that killed him. We wouldn't have to think of him every time Jupiter or Saturn or Mars lit up that evening sky. This was different. His ship had fallen into the sun. And the sun was big and fiery and merciless, and it was always in the sky, and you couldn't get away from it. So, for a long time after my father died, my mother slept through the days and wouldn't go out. We had breakfast at midnight and lunch at 3 a.m. and dinner at the cold, dim hour of 6 a.m. We went to all-night shows and went to bed at sunrise. And for a long while, the only days we ever went out to walk were the days when it was raining and there was no sun. And that's the end.
Ray. Ray. So how do you connect this, other than the fact that it's based on it? What are the parallels between Elton John's song and this story?
Well, I think the thing that stood out to me the most was these two writers' abilities to put us in the shoes of something that we'll never be able to experience.
Yeah.
And I think that's the amazing thing about songwriting and about literature, about the power of words and being immersed in them and being surrounded in them, is this ability to experience things that you can only imagine.
Yeah.
And I doubt I'll, ever have my husband go off into space and fly a spaceship into the sun.
I might. Now I kind of want to.
But this very real feeling of grief and avoiding things of like what reminds you of your person is something that hundreds of millions of people have experienced. Mm-hmm. And for me, like, I haven't had a lot of people around me like pass or leave and stuff, and it gives me the opportunity to almost be empathetic, almost understand a little bit more in a very relatable way. Even if it is so fantastical, it's something that through these words I can really understand.
Wow. And isn't it, isn't it just so much powerful to be able to get that kind of empathy and that kind of ability from beautiful lyrics or beautiful words, rather than someone just saying like, oh, you should feel bad for him, or you should empathize with them. I mean, it's just, like you said, it's the power of words. It's the ability to make us feel emotions that we wouldn't have felt otherwise if we had never, read those words or heard that song. And dang, that's the power of art.
And especially with Elton John's song, like, I'm Gonna Be High or whatever, he makes you sit in it, really. Yeah. Like, you get to really feel it. And if you're, because you can very passively listen to this song as you can passively read books and stuff.
Absolutely.
But if you turn on that noise cancellation, close your eyes or something, and you're listening to this, it teleports you, it transports you, and it really gives you the perspective of other people, of other circumstances, other situations. Yeah. And it's necessary.
It's so necessary. And it's why we keep art around. It's one of the reasons is what it does for us and how it makes us feel. Mm-hmm. I don't really have much to say other than that I agree with everything you said, and I'm going to be listening to Rocket Man a lot differently now.
And I just want to end on this idea of how cute it is, like how people keep art around them like this.
Yeah.
Like Ray Bradbury's story is kind of sad, as a lot of his stories are.
Yeah.
And Rocket Man is this conflicted reality of an astronaut, but the idea that like humans want to print little frogs and little boats and humans want to think about what it would be like to be an astronaut every day, that's really cool.
Yeah. That's so true. I think that's a really good way to kind of bind our two topics together, is that we don't need to print little frogs. We can learn empathy in other ways, but there's something about, printing it from a 3D printer and making that model tangible and hearing about, someone being high as a kite and being an astronaut that just kind of immerses us in that, need for art and that need to kind of want life to be beautiful. I had an art history professor who at the beginning of the semester, he's like, we're going to go through art history, but we need to talk about like why, like what was the point of art? He talked about all these different societies and their art. He says, they didn't necessarily need art, but he said that he believed that it was inherent. It was inherent in human nature that we want life to be beautiful. And that's why we make art.
Perfectly said.
Yeah.
Perfectly said. So keep surrounding yourself with beauty, even if that means printing little frogs or reading really sad literature.
Yeah.
Feel something.
Feel something. Wow. Okay. Whew. I feel high as a kite by now. Not drug wise, but like positive.
And I feel
edified.
like a caked up frog.
Bye.
Bye.